Hello folks, name is Thomas Willis here. I'm going to talk a little bit about Fukushima, particularly strontium 90 and cesium 137, concerning their decay rates and how many years it'll take them to where they'll quit actually adding up. When you consider that reactors 1 and 2 are probably continuously outputting radiation, I estimate at a tenth the initial output level on a continuous basis, on a yearly basis. That's the basis of my calculations, etc. Well, we'll show you some of my calculations here. Okay, we got Z equals half-life in years, P equals continuous output, Y equals initial amount, D equals amount remaining. As you can tell, I've got an equation here. It's D equals Y plus P times Z minus 1/2 initial output plus partial output times Z, which is your years of half-life, divided by Z minus 1, then plus Z divided by Z minus 2, all the way out to Z divided by Z minus Z. Then here we have a set of equations. I've solved them out here for you, and as you can tell, I did that all the way out through, all the way up to this point. As you can tell, I put a dot in there in 1500. I just didn't have room to put all the calculations. There's 30 calculations that go in that room. Then of course you got the D equals 1000 plus 3000. That's what you get from this one right here. And then 2250 comes from this one over here. Then you minus the 4000 that you have from this here, minus that one over here as it trains down. Then that leaves you with 1750 actual units. As you can tell, it went up from 1000 to 1750 by the time the first series of half-lives of 30 years occurred for either of these two isotopes. And you got D2, it's 4750 because you add an additional 3000 units to it for the 30-year half-life, minus the 2375, which is this 2250 here, plus the 1750 divided by 2, since you do a half-life on it, gets you that number. And then the rest of these down through here are just additional equations. As you can tell, when you get down to D4, it actually comes up to a lower number. See here, it goes 1750 to 4750 to 6125 to 5300. See, it goes down between D3 and D4. Between 90 and 100 years, here's my years spectrum here, as you can tell. Between 90 and 120 years, it starts to decline. The total amount starts to decline. That's right, folks. The total amount starts to decline of both isotopes. And that's just the way half-lives work. But anyway, let me scan this one more time for anybody that wants to look at it. Maybe you can read my writing, maybe you can't. So, it takes between 90 and 120 years for the continuous radiation to start to be low enough. For the initial amount to be low enough that the continual radiation output does not continue to push up the amount of radiation that the plant actually has around it. And that, like I say, it takes about 100 to 120 years for that to occur. So both strontium-90 and cesium-137 are going to be gaining, if these reactors are indeed in place close to where they originally started from, then the radiation will continue to put out, and eventually you'll have additional radiation put out on a yearly basis. And the half-life will not, it takes 100 plus years for the half-life of the initial amount plus the add-on to actually start declining. So what you start with the half-life that's left over from the initial amount plus what's been released over the previous 90 to 100 years in the continuous output, which is what you have when you have a meltdown versus a nuclear bomb explosion. In a meltdown, you have a continuous output level. That continuous output level, I estimate at 10% of the initial output level. It's probably lower than that, which would change the figures and make it go faster, I think. But still, 90, 100 years, somewhere in that neighborhood, by 120 it starts to decline. And then it continues declining fairly rapidly. As you can tell, it declines from 6,100 in 90 years to 5,300 and something in 120 years, and then in 150 years it's down to 4,900. It ain't really dropped much, but by the time you reach the next level, it's dropped to 1,700. That's fast. Well, that's what I wanted to show you. That's it. Have a good one.